And thank you for joining us today for our first session for a counselor conference. Hopefully you all had a good time listening to Dr. Walshock this morning. My name is Kevin McMacken and I work for the Regional Consortium, and I will be the Zoom host today. I'm here to assist the presenters and also you. So welcome to our breakout session titled Sector Profile Presentations for Advanced Transportation and Advanced Manufacturing. We're excited to have Jonathan and Ruishan here to join us today. Just a couple of reminders before we get started. Excuse me, first we'd ask that you please keep yourselves muted. If you have a question or a comment, please make sure you enter that into the Q&A window in the Whova platform. It should just be to the right of your video. We also wanted to remind everybody that we will be uploading the breakout presentation materials and recording this breakout, and all of this will be available for attendees to access after the conference. After the breakout, please click on the button where it says rate session and complete the brief survey to help us as we prepare for future conferences. So with that, we will go ahead and turn the time to Jonathan and Ruishan to introduce themselves and to share their presentations.
Great, so I'm Jonathan and I'm going to start here. So let's see. So I prepared a quick presentation for you guys, and then I'll be taking question and comments right after the presentation. And then again, you can ask questions in the Whova app as Kevin explained.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Kropp, Regional Director for Advanced Transportation Logistics, and I've been with the community colleges for a little over 11 years, focusing on everything from transportation and logistics to construction and sustainability, as well as things like renewable energy. My current sector is basically comprised of four main areas, which is aviation, which is things like maintenance, aviation, drones, operations. We also have automotive that includes like ICE engines, internal combustion, as well as alternative fuel vehicles such as electric vehicles. We also do heavy duty vehicles such as diesel, CNG, and then lastly, supply chain and logistics. Today, however, I'm going to focus on supply chain and logistics as we just completed a sector study and we haven't actually been able to share with anybody yet. So you're the first to see a little bit of information of the larger study. The study will be available on our regional website, myworkforceconnection.org, as well as our sector website, atleducation.org, probably in a couple of weeks. Today's agenda, we're going to briefly talk a little bit about kind of what supply chain logistics is, some trends in LMI, what's next, and then of course questions and answers. So what is supply chain logistics? The most basic definition really is logistics, the focus or coordination and movement of goods, whereas supply chain is concerned with a much bigger process, a much bigger picture of sourcing, processing, delivering goods to the end user or that customer. The sector is basically broken up into five main areas: plan, source, make, deliver, and return. Planning being the demand and supply planning, the management, the communication planning. Sourcing being the source, like the infrastructure of sourcing, the material acquisition, the purchasing. The make is the manufacturing and production. Deliver obviously is the order management, the warehousing, the transportation, and then return. Companies basically must be prepared to handle the return of containers, packaging, defective products, things of that nature. So why did we conduct a study? Well, through conversations with employers, associations, recent news, things of nature, we thought there might be an underlying or underserving our employers here, and it turns out we were. As many of you might know, there's been a growing shift in consumer goods from the physical, like the brick and mortar, to e-commerce. And in fact, some studies have said that COVID-19 has accelerated the e-commerce transition by 4 to 6 years, which increases the need for logistics and supply chain professionals at a time when other businesses are laying people off. In April, you might have seen the article by the Wall Street Journal. They reported that warehousing and storage operators hired 8,200 people, 8,200 new workers in March. And around that same time, Amazon announced that it was hiring about 175,000 people, new workers, to help run its fulfillment and delivery network. These are just a couple examples of why it's kind of been an exciting time to work on this project. So this next slide, you'll see kind of the basic career lattice for supply chain and logistics, and we're still working on this with industry to kind of vet it out. But at your basic level down here, you can see that you have your forklift operators, freight movers, shipping and receiving. This is really your like entry level. And then you get into those coordination levels, those supervisor levels, and then management. The interesting thing, obviously, since these are very closely tied, a lot of these jobs can traverse areas from logistics to supply chain and supply chain logistics. On this slide, you'll see a career ladder. You can see the basic ladder, associated average salaries, the typical education and experience level, as well as some of the sample KSAs. We're not going to go too into depth in KSAs during this presentation because we are actually getting ready to vet this our whole report with industry, and they'll help us kind of identify those KSAs. So these are just examples of ones that we found through our research. So basically, if you look at like level 1 here, you have no education and experience, 0 to 1 years. And you're going to have things like production workers, freight and stock handlers, warehouse workers, forklift operators like we saw on that last screen. And their average pay between all of these is about $15.83 or about $32,900. Then you get in over that kind of middle skill job area, right? And then you're in that kind of like AA degree, those different certs, maybe 1 to 3 years experience. And you're going to have your production planning, your expediting clerks, your traffic coordinators, dock coordinators, things of that nature. And you're looking at more of that $21 to $64 if you take an average of all those, which is about $45,000. Now you get into your more high skill level 3, which is your bachelor degrees, you still have some associate degrees, certifications, and your 5+ years. And now we're looking at like your warehouse supervisors, your fleet supervisors, really that supervisor analyst kind of sweet spot, cost estimators, logistics supervisors, things of that nature. And now you can see the pay gets quite a bit more, almost twice the livable wage in San Diego. So now you're like $29.13 and about $60,590 a year. Now, of course, you get into the level 4. This is your high skill management. This is your BAs, your MAs, your certs, 7+ years. And these are things like distribution managers, quality assurance, supply chain managers, logistic managers, etc. And now your pay it jumps quite a bit to about $52.94 or $110,000 a year. So the one great thing I think about this this industry or this subsector is that the pay can be quite good. So what does supply chain look like for business? Well, supply chain logistics can be found in many areas of business, such as business department, your facilities department. Of course, that's more of like an internal supply chain and logistics. But every small business, every large business, warehouses, supply chain is basically everywhere. Some people do it more of a kind of an informal process, whereas other companies have a more formalized process. And you can see this, some people obviously do it better than others. I mean, 2 examples, probably some of the best are things like Amazon and Tesla, who are crazy vertically integrated. If you look at Tesla, that's why they're able to have the best margins in the industry. And then again, if you look at Amazon, they're building their own, logistics fleets, both planes, trucks, electric vehicles, and that's why they're so market dominant. So on this slide, these are just a few employers and organizations that have been hiring lately, and jobs in supply chain logistics are related. So, those purchasing people, cost estimators, supply chain logisticians, that kind of thing. So you'll see Amazon, General Atomics, of course you have your DoD and your, aviation. And then you have companies like Bumblebee and WD-40, Tesla down here, of course, your healthcares have it. And then even your breweries and Juneshine and people like that are definitely hiring for their supply chain logistics people. So now we get into kind of the trends in San Diego County, and this is some of the data that we're sharing from our report, initial data, of course. So between 2019 and 2024, occupations in the deliver category of logistics and supply chain occupations have the most employment in San Diego and are projected to increase the most by 925 net jobs, or 5%. However, occupations in the plan, that yellow line category, had the highest employment growth between 2009 and 2019. And so you can see there in 2009, it was about 6,000 jobs in that plan category, and that number ballooned to 12,000 in 2019, which was a 94% increase. This significant employment increase suggests occupations in the logistics and production, the planning, the expediting clerks have become very important to employers in San Diego County. Now over to the right, that exhibit 2 there provides more kind of detailed information on each occupation, including things like projected employment change, labor market demand between 2019 and 2024. Oh, by the way, labor market demand is defined as the number of job openings that an employer expects to fill due to attrition, so things like turnover and retirement. So employers in San Diego County are projected to hire around 6,000 workers annually between 2019 and 2024 for logistics and supply chain management occupations. So you can kind of see that here. It kind of just breaks down some of the occupations. I think this is one of the most telling and interesting slides here, is that demand versus supply, right? So comparing labor demand, the annual openings, with labor supply suggests that there's a supply gap for these occupations in San Diego, with around that 6,500 annual openings and around 1,900 awards across education institutions. And comparatively, there are about 85,000 annual openings in California, with around 6,700 awards across those educational institutions, suggesting that there's also a supply gap in the state of California. Now, the typical education for this sector, or these careers, traditional labor market information indicates that a majority of logistics and supply chain management occupations require less than a bachelor's degree, which I think is great for potential employers or employees. But we're also vetting that information because some of the kind of the newer, recently pulled information has a lot of bachelor degree desired kind of thing. So now for wages, you saw a little bit of those wages, and according to the traditional LMI, the entry hourly earnings for logistics supply chain is around that $13.68, right around there, to around $48. However, median hourly earnings for these occupations are higher than living wage for a single adult in San Diego County, which is $16 an hour. And as you kind of saw, I think back a few slides when we were doing that, where it's kind of listing the career path, you could see that these salaries go up quite extensively. So if you guys were interested in reading some of the latest research and news, if you're kind of interested in this topic, or maybe you have kind of a supply chain or logistics program at your school or something similar, here are some of the most recent reports that I thought were really interesting that you'll be able to pull if you, I think this slideshow is available online. So what's next? So we're currently vetting the supply chain logistics study via our employer interviews, a focus group this week, and surveys. So once vetted, the information will be presented to the colleges, and then like an RFP or an RFA process will be developed. So currently in the community colleges, there's only a couple small programs that are serving kind of this niche. However, over the next year, we're hoping to work with those colleges to kind of repackage existing curriculum, create new curriculum, or enhance programs to kind of better serve this sector via that RFP process. And additionally, I would love to, I think one of the things I'll be doing is auditing the high schools here in San Diego to see if any are focusing in this area, or if there might be any kind of alignment opportunities with those colleges that are going to have that program. Now we're to the questions and answers section. So So I'm happy to answer any questions you have about this topic in my sector or the sector as general. You know, we're putting together strategies together now for electric vehicles, both light duty and medium duty. There's obviously a lot of legislation in that area that will drive future training, but this is kind of just the first study we're publishing.
Hi, I have a question. On the slide that had the different positions and the education and pay,
Yeah, this one?
it was one of the first slides you showed.
Yeah, let me pull that back up for what was the question?
Well, if somebody has, for example, a bachelor's degree in physics, but they don't have a lot of experience in that industry, where would they start? I'm assuming they wouldn't start at the $15.
No, I mean, like, you know, bachelor's degree, they don't necessarily, it's kind of like most jobs you see. So like, it'll say like bachelor's degree desired, and it'll say in kind of a similar industry or similar skills, or not industry, but similar education. So, I mean, like, I think depending on what their degree is in, that would definitely be beneficial and would start them at the kind of higher level. And it also depends on what their experience is.
Yeah, that's my question. If they don't have any experience directly in that, you know, industry, or would they still be able to start a little bit higher since they have a bachelor's?
Maybe, but I mean, depending, like a lot of this stuff is experience based. So you're probably gonna be more in the skill area. So more of that, like, you know, starting as like warehouse coordinating, logistics coordinator, maybe like a junior buyer or purchasing coordinator, things of that nature, depending on kind of what their degree is and what their other, you know, what their past experience is.
And,
Okay,
and
thank you.
Just to add to that quickly, Karen, I think that's one of the things that John and the region have been looking at is some of those short-term certificates to work with the colleges to develop those. So somebody with a bachelor's degree, an unrelated bachelor's degree, could get an accelerated training and then apply for some of this work.
Yeah, and this is
Okay, that was, yeah.
so when we vet this report out with our industry. So we're having a big focus group on this Friday, actually. And that's some of the, you know, some of the things we're going to be asking them, like, you know, what degrees are you really looking at? You know, what does this information mean for students? And then, yeah, of course, we're going to be talking about, you know, what industry recognized certificates are the most important, things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions I can help anybody with?
So I don't see any questions in the chat, John. So we're a small group. If any of the attendees have a specific question for John, I think they can go ahead and unmute themselves, just like Karen did. Any other questions?
Otherwise, we could turn it over to Ruishan, and then if people think of any questions at the end, we can we'll certainly have a little bit extra time.
Sounds good. Thank you, John. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. That was great. Hi, everybody. My name is Ruishan. Can everyone see my screen? Yes, I cannot see you because I didn't share my screen. Let's see. Okay, right here. Okay, so thanks everyone for attending this session today. A really quick intro about myself. My name is Ruishan Chow. I'm the Regional Director of Employer Engagement, focusing on advanced manufacturing. I actually worked more than half of my life in industry. I spent almost 10 years in industry. I graduated with a chemical engineering degree. So when the last lady who actually presented, it was really dear to my heart because I grew up loving knowing how to tinker stuff, like to always break things apart. People would be building things, I would be taking them apart. And then after that, I joined industry. I worked in industry for almost 9 years. Did a couple of different jobs from technicians to technologists and then engineering. And then I started managing people. And at that time, I felt, you know, there must be more to life. So I decided to join education. Today, we are going to be talking about advanced manufacturing. I'm going to give you a really quick intro about what advanced manufacturing is. Some of you may have an idea, some of you are still feeling fuzzy about it, and then the trends on what's coming, and how to identify manufacturing companies, and how to create sector awareness and outreach. I'm sure that this is the counselors conference, and I'm sure that there are some counselors within this room, and you may have students who are wondering, how can I get into this field? I really love hands-on, or I love designing, what can I do? So there are some associations that's available that maybe you can get connected with or get your students to be in touch with. So what is advanced manufacturing? I will not read all these, but just read the yellow words that stand out to you. For me, this is quite an accurate definition because it looks at information, it looks at computation, automation, sensing, talking about sensors, like the lights, right? When you walk into a room, the lights turn on. That's manufacturing. And networking, as well as using cutting edge materials. For example, looking at different composite material. Like for example, I love cooking. So chopping board, right? There are all kinds of chopping board and what they can do. In emerging capabilities enabled by physical and biological sciences, nanotechnologies is also something that's coming up right now. And it really focuses on both the new ways to manufacture an existing product. For example, iPhone is always changing. Phones are changing all the time. How can we look at new ways to make them or to make them more useful? And also manufacture of new products emerging from new advanced technologies. This is one of my favorite infographic. It shows us how industry has moved throughout the years. It went from Industry 1.0, where we have all that steam and water-powered trains, to mass production assembly lines. If you remember Ford, Detroit, they used to be big on that. And then Industry 3.0 is about automated production using electronics, such as PLC, IT system, and robotics. So I would say that education and industry right now, a lot of us are still here. But you will start noticing that, at least that's the trend, you start noticing that a lot of companies are really trying to get real-time data. They want to know that if they manufacture like a pen or lip balm, for instance, they want to know the quality ASAP. And also they tie in a lot they cross over to a lot of different sectors like supply chain and ICT. So it's about how it can be a smart factory more than just making parts. And if we want to compete with other countries who have a lower labor wages, and we don't want our jobs to keep going out of the country, then we need to be smart about things. We need to start looking at data. We need to be able to get solutions right away. So what does advanced manufacturing look like for an employer? Previously, I think I've spoke to a few individuals. They always thought that, oh, if my son or daughter goes into manufacturing, they can only work in the manufacturing floor. That's not true. That's really not true. And I also want to dispel the myth that manufacturing is dirty, dark, and dangerous. Look at me. I used to work in areas that's really dark and dangerous, but every company have really top of the line safety gears, and they will always make sure that their employees are safe. If not, they run the risk of being shut down. But as someone who actually goes into manufacturing or engineering, they can work in all these different areas. Those areas that are highlighted in blue are areas that people who graduated from a advanced manufacturing program can possibly go into: R&D, production manufacturing, facilities and maintenance. I will talk about this in depth later. Engineering, quality. Quality is really important, right? You want to be able to receive an iPhone that actually works. So anything that's being manufactured has to go through a quality process, and there are so many jobs in there. There's regulatory and compliance. So you've heard San Diego is the biotech hub. So while they make all these vaccines, all these drugs, it has to go through a really rigorous quality process. And of course, ICT. A lot of my friends actually ended up in ICT. They thought they want to be an engineer, but they ended up realizing they like data science. So now they have both, right? A chemical engineering degree with a data science certification. And last but not least, supply chain. So this is what, I know it looks complicated, but just like our student has a roadmap to their success from preschool, kindergarten, to high school, to college, to community college, and then university and PhD. And in industry, we also have the same thing. Everyone starts somewhere, assuming that everyone start at the bottom, right? Most of us all start at the bottom. They have multiple ways to navigate and get into different jobs. So if you remember, I had a slide just now where I show you what does manufacturing look like for employer. The blue circles now turn into these rectangular blue box. So these are different departments within an organization. And anyone, when they start in anywhere in the organization, they shouldn't feel like they're being kept in a cage. There's so many lateral progression. These days, employers want people who's not just one-dimensional. They want them to be able to know a lot more. Do one job, but have that curiosity to do something else. That's how you move up. And then there's some method behind all that madness. I was from industry and I came up with that, but then what does that mean? And how can I use that to unpack what we need? So there's a methodology. We looked at labor market information, reports by the Center of Excellence. We conducted secondary research to identify data sources. We held interviews with employers, that's primarily my job, to validate the findings, talk to them about what KSAs are important, and also looking at surveys. So especially during the pandemic, I actually sent out a couple of surveys and got some survey responses back. So those are really great. They talk about how they wished they had actually moved into automation, because when you run a business, when you put effort into automation, it means R&D money, right? What's the quickest way to make money? Selling existing product. And that's something like a dilemma that every organization has. Do we want to focus on R&D, or should we focus everything on solving our problems right now? But we need to look further. And labor market analysis by Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. So we have a tons of data out there, and we also did a lot of industry panel sessions, and these are all direct interactions with employers in multiple venues. And obviously, there are so many news reports by Industry Week, CNBC, Deloitte, Boston Consulting Group. You can Google this. You will have the slides as well. So I would take the opportunity to use this to read, to really find out where the world is going. You will realize that everything is intertwined. So here are some local employers and organizations that's in San Diego and Imperial. I didn't put other organizations like Tesla, although Tesla do have a presence here now. Hunter Industry, right, in San Marcos, we have that. We have Providian, who was recently acquired by another big company that was based in Arizona. Western CNC, they're focusing on CNC machining, making all kinds of parts. And Genentech, it's a biotech life science company, but they are also looking at automation. So all these words that are highlighted in yellow, there is some sort of automation being implemented in that company. I used to work for Johnson Matthey, and for those who have been to Johnson Matthey, we make, I don't work there anymore. They used to make medical device component, like your components that go to your catheter and the components that goes into your brain for aneurysm. And then they have robots or cobots, collaborative robots that actually work with humans to help make these parts. And everything is automated. Every day they can make thousands of parts. But if we only depend on human, I don't think we can make that many parts, and it's very costly, right? So what are the trends? I'm going to show you two main occupations that actually are trending right now. The very big one would definitely be the maintenance and repair worker, because you see it's at the number one, the top average annual opening, and we are still struggling to fill these jobs. All the jobs that I highlighted in yellow over here, they are related to industrial automation and maintenance occupations. And all those jobs that I circle in blue, they are also very important because they are in the top middle skilled in demand jobs. But because it was quite difficult for employers to find qualified candidates or programmers or machinists, that sometimes they even thought about perhaps automating that. And here are some examples of occupations with the wages, entry-level hourly earnings, median hourly earnings, And some of you are probably wondering, where did I get all these? It's all here. So if you have my slides, you should be able to find out where these are. It's all online. And you can also go to coeccc.net and search for a specific region. So the very first one that's in demand, right? These are the blue collar jobs that was mentioned just now. And they are so important because as much as we want to create cool technologies and build cool robots, there's gonna be someone who is smart enough to go fix them, right? Someone who knows how to tinker, who can diagnose a problem and can troubleshoot right there so that machines can keep running, so you can keep getting all the favorite phones that we want and stuff that we want. And looking at San Diego County, there's an average of 1,521 annual openings, and that number is just gonna go up. And these are some of the example of hourly earnings. So it really depends on the sub-industry sector, right? In the professional, scientific, and technical services, they definitely get paid more. I would say they are probably like in the life science field. They have all these really cool machines like lyophilizer. Someone's got to fix them, right? It's not gonna be the scientists who fix them. It's not gonna be the engineers who fix them because they don't know how. There's also the transportation, equipment, manufacturing, and so on. Some of the top employers, I was surprised when I saw that, but you know, it makes sense. Marriott International, they have big buildings, big facilities, nice equipment, but they need someone to fix them, right? Cisco Corporation, Home Depot, and so on. But let's not also forget our local employers. They also need people. And the reason I would say they probably end up higher in this ranking is only because they are a large corporation. So when they hire more. The other one is industrial automation and maintenance occupations. So here are just some numbers, and you have access to all these. If you look at my the end of my slides, I have a link to them, or you can always email me and I'll send them to you. And as you can see, we have a gap in San Diego County. Not just San Diego, but in California in general. And here are some of the examples of wages. Don't you think they are quite high? They are really quite high. I don't think I was paid that much when I started as an engineer. And here are the examples of top employers. And this is an interesting one. Some counselors will ask me, Ruishan, what kind of skills, certification, or education do our students need? But here's a good example. And what I want to say is, we've been talking about certifications and credentials, right? Someone coming out from high school, they can easily go get a certification and then get a good job, and at the same time go back to school and continue their studies, so that they can keep getting more experience and going to higher level. So this is an example of opportunity where we can have stackable credentials. Here, this is where the money is. I created this because people are curious, what's the career pathway gonna be like for people in manufacturing? So this is an example. And when we were in manufacturing, we have two kinds. We have one who are very people focused, like engineers who are very people, and then there are also technicians and engineers who are just want to fix stuff. They don't want to talk to anybody, right? So I divided into two. But as you can see, everyone starts somewhere. And on the left is the type of skills and the degree that you will need to be at this position. But that said, sometimes you don't necessarily need to have a degree to be a manager. Sometimes you just need an associate's degree. I knew of a manager that actually only had a high school, but he worked his way up. He had to work longer because it's the experience that they want, so that it can compensate for the lack of an education. And this is for maintenance. So that's a difference between production and maintenance. And it's important for us to know because for people in production, they are more about every day I want to make more parts. I want to reduce scrap. I care about the environment. I want to help the company make more money. Maintenance too, but they are trying to help company to save money where necessary. Meaning they want to make sure that the machine don't break down as much. Imagine if your machine breaks down, what does that mean? That means that you cannot run your parts, so you are losing money every day, right? So for those who are wondering, how can I help my students find programs? The best website is careered.org. That's where you can find, like, for example, if you're looking for programs in welding, just go to careered.org and go to program finder and then type weld. It should populate all the different colleges that actually provide that. So different colleges call their programs, have different names for their program. So I actually simplified it by putting them into all these boxes. But essentially in our region, what I'm trying to focus on is helping our programs become more robust so that we can produce more smart and talented people who can work on industrial automation and maintenance, which is this yellow box over here. And skills and competencies. These are the high-level skills and competencies that's required for these jobs. And it's interesting because when we were talking to employers, they always talk about showing up on time, the 21st century employability skills. It's not about just being smart anymore. You don't just need to have be good with your hands. You don't just need to have high IQ. Those are important, but what they're really looking for is EQ. Someone who's able to communicate well, write in simple way, simple enough that someone can understand. Because in manufacturing, there are different shifts, right? We need to be able to talk to let the other shift know what happened during my shift. But if an employee lacks that skill, then the wrong information might be transferred. So that's not a good thing. Last, I have a last 2 more slides. This is for anyone who's curious, how can you identify manufacturing companies? I've also gotten a lot of questions on this. That's why I created this slide. You can ask folks like myself or John. Or you can look at your current region's workforce and economic development boards. Look at Center of Excellence studies. Go Google them. I do that. I do a lot of cold calling too. Newsletters, events, webinars. I have a monthly event that I hold with my counterpart Monica Rosas, who actually organized this conference. And of course, network, ask people what they do at the supermarket. Hey, what do you do? So from there, you learn about what people do. Just be curious about people. And for those who have students and they are wondering if engineering or manufacturing is for them, or even science, have them check out these associations. Because that's where they can find people who used to be in their shoes, wondering if this is the right place for me. So these are my counterparts in other region. For some of you who might be from another region, you can reach out to these people or I can connect you with them. And here are some of the other resources that you can tap into to learn more, and references where you can find more information of how the data and the analysis for advanced manufacturing in our region. So I think that's the end of my presentation, everyone. Thank you for your attention. Questions?
I have a question for everybody. One of the things that the keynote speaker had mentioned, she talked about declining careers, and one of those was retail. And we know that women are overrepresented in our brick and mortar retail stores. And for anyone on the panel, I'm wondering what kind of efforts or initiatives are being introduced or implemented to outreach and recruit to women who are generally underrepresented in these good paying middle skills careers. I know for myself, I work at San Diego Continuing Education, and when I look into a welding class, it's probably like 90% men, and maybe there's like maybe 1 or 2 women sprinkled around. So I know we need to do better as well to help outreach and recruit. So I was just wondering what's happening to try and reach that demographic to help fill in these employment gaps I keep hearing about.
Well, and I know in like automotive, aviation, like welding, like you said, they actually have had some programs that have been going around different colleges where they're introducing it to high school females to try to get them kind of interested in that industry and showing them that they're quite good paying and that you know might be more interested than they might think. Kind of breaking down those social norms. But,
And I would say having, oh, go ahead, continue. I would say having role models is really important. I grew up never fearing math or science because my aunt was an engineer and I have been told that I need to be good in math and science. Maybe this is also a culture thing, but the fact that they had an expectation that I could do more was really important because it made me feel like I'm no different from anybody else. And for me in this role, I've been having a lot of employer events and I will make sure that I always include at least 50% female to talk about their career journey. And actually this year before the pandemic hit, March, we actually had a Women in Manufacturing and Engineering Day. I did it at City College. So yeah, just keep plugging into all these regional consortium events and we always try our best to reach out to all high schools, all women. I'm trying to bring society women engineers into my work now so that they have a voice. Hope that helps.
And I would add, you know, in John's slides, he mentioned marketing as one of the efforts for supply chain. So with each of these programs, we're looking at targeted internal and external marketing when we're referring to like colleges, for example. So how do we reach out to internal populations within a college and then also the community at large, and really looking and drilling down into some of those groups or populations that tend to be underserved or represented within our programs. So that's definitely a priority for us in our region.
Yeah, and so we've actually in our sector been creating kind of like infographics around different areas like electric vehicles. That supply chain one, you guys saw kind of a little bit of it. Talks about like jobs, what schools have them. So we're doing like different kinds of marketing efforts. I mean, with supply chain logistics, we kind of had the military circled as another one, special population that we're going to go after because of their like security clearances. And for some of the jobs in those DoD aerospace, there's a lot of security clearances required. So that's a lot of things that we're going to be looking at when we go out to market these programs.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for our presenters?
It's a quiet group.
I know. This is your opportunity. Don't be shy.
Or introduce yourself. I would love to know where everyone is from.
I have another question. I'm Joyce Almario. I'm from San Diego Continuing Ed. I'm wondering, how is age a big factor, whether you're male or female? Is that, because at Continuing Ed, our demographic, 54% are over the age of 40. And I'm often, asked, how can I get a job now? I've been in a career for the last 20 years and my company just closed. I need to retrain, reskill, upskill. And, these folks are in their 40s, 50s, and some even in their 60s. Is age a big factor? And if it is, how can one sort of, compensate for that?
I think it depends on the career, right? But I think it's also kind of how they repackage themselves. A lot of those skills are kind of like really diving deep on what skills that they have from those previous jobs that they might not even be aware of, that they can repurpose for these other careers. Because a lot of this stuff, like Ruishan mentioned earlier, kind of traverses all sectors. There's those, basic KSAs that kind of go through. So, walking students through that KSA process, and seeing kind of what they did. But I mean, yeah, some jobs, maybe the more physical side, maybe if you're, a lot older, those might not be applicable, but I don't think age is too much of a factor in a lot of these things. At least
yeah, and in fact, I really agree with John. In fact, I think employers do really appreciate those who are older because they bring different experience. I'll tell you one of my experience. When I started off as an engineer, I had all these bright ideas. Wow, I have all this cool design. I want to make all these changes. And then one of the operator who was 50 something, and he looked at me and he's like, "Girl, where did you get your degree from? What kind of," he was looking at me, giving me a good lesson, like, what are you thinking? But, they people like them, they bring so much groundedness. And I think that's what we can help them realize, that they have so much groundedness and common sense that some of us who are younger. And just be really curious, start somewhere, learn one skill, any skill, and just be confident about it, that they have a lot to bring.
And in many cases, they bring those 21st century employability skills because they've had time to work on them and develop them, that a lot of our younger students are still trying to develop.
Yeah, I almost feel like that has to be part, like as my job as a counselor, to sort of make sure that that's kind of highlighted, that they do have, they're already like this fully formed person that has skill sets and experiences that are valuable. And I think that's, I know on my end, that's something I definitely have to keep reminding people, even after a certain age, is, you're still viable, and you just, it's maybe not easy, but it's not impossible either. So thank you so much for all your.
I can validate that because one of the schools that have one of the best program, Gateway Technical College in Wisconsin, in their advanced manufacturing curriculum, Psychology 101 was there, one of the curriculum. Why? Because you need to know the psyche of human beings to be able to work with them. And I think the way they can stand out, those who are 40 and above, is really to show that they have all these skills. While I might not have all these technical skills, or I cannot do as fast as these younger ones, but I have all these 21st century skills that I can leverage.
Yeah, and when I help people out with like resume writing and stuff, taking them through like exercise of what they do on a day-to-day basis, like a lot of people forget or take it for granted, all the things that they actually do, and especially the things where they wear other hats within the business, like a lot of us do, and all that tertiary stuff that they kind of do, that people just forget about, and they forget to put it on their resume. That could be quite important.
Thank you. Any other questions from our attendees? Even if they're specific to your program or institution, I'm sure John or Ruishan would be more than happy to answer or provide feedback.
Yeah, I had a question. I'm Heidi Bridges from San Diego Virtual School, and we service all of San Diego County as a high school that's typically, we're virtual before pandemic hit. And when you had mentioned that, I know in the first one, John, that there was a few of the colleges had your programs, but one of the things that we're struggling with is really trying to find those programs for the entry-level student in the community colleges. There's so many, and we service, typically our students go to 11 different community colleges. And so I wondered if you could highlight some of them that have programs in both of your industries, so that as we get those students who have no skills, they're coming from families that, haven't been mentors, and we want to kind of lead them a little quicker to a program at the local community colleges. It's just so hard to find them on the community college websites.
Yeah, so I've actually been working on this problem for a few years now, because even when I was doing the research for this project, I could not find these programs. And I'm like, if I can't find them, then how are the students going to find them? Like, they'll be hidden within programs, or maybe just the class, that kind of thing. So, in regards to this one, there's only two programs really: Southwestern College and then Palomar. But what I'm doing again with those infographics is on the back of the infographic, it'll have the actual colleges that have programs, and it'll lead you directly with the link to that program. So that's everything from, right now we have 4 of them, aviation and drones, then we have electric vehicles, and then we have supply chain and logistics. And there's one more I can't think of at the moment right now, but basically we're going to be distributing those out to everyone as soon as they're finalized in the next couple months, and it'll be available on our website, so that you can basically just give that to a student. It gives them a lot of fun facts about that industry, a bunch of salaries, and kind of the general knowledge, skills, and abilities, and then tells you what colleges offer that program to make it a little easier on them.
Great, thank you.
And I don't mind leaving my email. I'm not sure where we can find my email because the chat is disabled, but feel free to reach out to me and I can give you that list.
I have a question also. My name is Kirsten Poxelli. I work at Mesa College. I'm a counselor. But what I see, I have a high school student I'm wondering how you're reaching out to high schools, because I don't even see, every time we go to any kind of career night, there doesn't seem to be, they're not uplifting the community colleges as an option, is what I've seen again and again in the high schools in San Diego. So I was just wondering how you're reaching out to the high school counselors and educating them.
Well, the high school counselors used to kind of come to these counselor conferences. But then I know for like my sector, I go out to the high schools that have like, say, automotive programs and work with their staff and do presentations, or sit on their advisory committees, which have kind of like students involved as well. And then again, like these infographics are going to be going out to high schools to help students kind of find different programs. So that's a few ways that we're doing it. And then individual colleges also have like career days where they come to the colleges, or signing days like at Miramar College, where they come and look at these programs and then can sign up kind of as interested students for, like, say, things, the diesel program, aviation.
And before the pandemic hit, we used to have events. We would take high school students to, say, a college. For example, we would take Oceanside High School to Miracosta because they do have some crossover there. But we also reach out to CTE teachers in high schools to introduce our program, or to take them with us to industry so that they could do some sort of work-based learning. But I guess your question is, how can we also involve counselors, right?
Yeah, and also a lot of the schools now are A through G. They don't have career technical education anymore. I know my son's school doesn't have it. And so a lot of the kids who might be better served actually getting training and going into the workforce don't even know that that's an option. They're pushed to go to the four-year university.
Yeah. If I could just chime in with what John and Ruishan have shared so far. So Kirsten, we have Heather and Monica, who actually organized Counselor Conference with their committee. They also have a role within K-12, and they help to facilitate work-based learning experiences with K-12 institutions. We also have been partnering with the San Diego County Office of Education with their innovations team to develop a partnership and really start to strategize on how we more efficiently and effectively communicate with all of the high schools and share the different opportunities that are happening throughout the county with regard to career education programs, but also just at the community colleges at large. Right. We're also working with the outreach teams at the various colleges to share with them the different opportunities and how they can engage in a more targeted way students throughout the community. And then just to go back, I think Heidi had asked how we can find these things. I just wanted to reemphasize, Ruishan in her presentation shared a website, careered.org. And so I just wanted to reemphasize, if you're struggling, or if you have a student who comes in and says, I want to do welding, but I just don't know what to do. If you start at careered.org, you can search by college, or you can search by program.
There you go.
And Ruishan's sharing it. So you can search by college or by program, and it will tell you what is available.
This is quite new. And then you can search by sector.
Correct.
Or you can type in program. And then you should pop up all the programs, for instance. Hope that helps.
Hi, this is Phil Letkin from Trade Tech in Vista. I want to take the opportunity because one of the things we do, we are a small charter school in the Vista School District, and we're wedged in between both Palomar and Miracosta. And both colleges are amazing at their outreach with us. We actually do have a mechatronics program, we have a full machining program, and we have a manufacturing program in addition to construction and automotive and a couple others. But both colleges, one of the things they do very well is their outreach. Both are participating on our advisory committees. And also both come and they actually set up booths during our college and career nights. So they have a tremendous outreach with our students. So the students from the time they're freshmen have reached out and talked to the counselors from Palomar. And not only counselors, they will send out deans to man different booths because we have the programs we have. They'll set up a booth just on the woodworking at Palomar to try to get people to come out and see what they have, or the automotive program there, or the technical drawing program. So it is pretty amazing the work that both Palomar and Miracosta have done with us, but it really is nice because we invite them to set up booths, and every single time they take advantage of it.
Nice.
Great, thank you.
Kirsten, it looks like, it looks like you responded. I was going to say Monica, who does our middle school and high school engagement, shared her email for you. So feel free to reach out to Monica. Okay, we have just a couple more minutes. Any parting questions or comments? Great. Well, thank you everybody for your participation today. A special thank you to John Kropp and Ruishan Chow, our regional directors of employer engagement. Thank you for your efforts and work to gather this data and information. We just wanted to remind everybody, when you click out of this session, please take the survey and let us know how we did. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.